Welcome to Tactical Talk. This is Zain Khan. Today, the topic revolves around the growing political instability in the United States. Our first guest is Matthew Ehret. He is a philosopher and also a social thinker in Canada. We have with us today from Serbia, Joaquin Flores. He is the editor-in-chief of Fortress and also a senior geopolitical analyst. Welcome to our show, Joaquin.
Thanks for having me on, Zain.
Let's get to the first question and let's ask Joaquin the first question. What the hell happened in Capitol Hill?
That is the $64,000 question, and thank you for asking that. I think that's what people really want to know. As you know, there are millions of people who believe that the election was stolen and that there were too many irregularities to account for. And they've also been following and listening to a president who has encouraged that view, and I think with just cause. Now, what we saw happen at the same time, however, was that there's undoubted and confirmed video footage that security guards actually let some groups of protesters in. This is very strange because they had been pushing up against a barricade, and then the police suddenly decided to say, walk right in, go for it, have at it, have fun, do your best. It was very, very strange, and it led to at least one death that we saw on video and numerous reports of other injuries and casualties. This appears to be something which goes beyond first glance. There's definitely something going on beneath the surface here that needs to be investigated. I think that every angle must be pursued and no stone can be left unturned.
Let's get to Matthew. Matthew, I want to ask the question, but before the question, I want to make a comment. Now, I'm no fan of Donald Trump. I criticize him for his stance on China. I criticize him for sometimes what he says seems Islamophobic. But at the same time, I like the fact that he has not started any new war in his 4-year tenure. He was not he did not start wars as previous presidents of the United States have. So we can balance it out because I'm a neutral observer. I can see his pros and his cons. But the way he lost the elections from day one, I was clear that it's Joe Biden. He's coming in. Right? Because I sensed how the so-called United States establishment did not want Trump in the second term. The way the voting stopped and then Biden kept on winning. And, now looking at the fact that Trump is going, how do you see a post-Trump United States?
Well, your question is an important one. I think that people are definitely asking. I think that it's more nuanced than that as well, though. It's true that Trump did represent, as many leaders in the Council on Foreign Relations and these think tanks have called him, the disturbance. In the sense that everything that had been put into motion for the past decades, especially since the assassinations of Robert F. Kennedy, have been going according to plan. They didn't forgive him for disrupting the script in 2016, and that's been an ongoing process. I think what we're facing right now is a dangerous slide into something that can accelerate very quickly in a parallel way that we saw the ouster of Kurt von Schleicher in 1933 January in Germany escalate very quickly when he was ousted in a soft coup in Germany in favor of Hitler being made chancellor very quickly. And what we saw immediately thereafter was the burning of the Reichstag as an inside job. With a lot of similarities to what's been set up today in terms of how the media is projecting the events that occurred on January 6th and the backlash against that, that created a condition for Hitler's enabling acts, the revocation of habeas corpus, freedom of speech, and other things, which we see big tech, social media putting into motion very quickly and saying, we have to get rid of Trump thought, like was Rick Klein, the ABC news director, has said, we have to cleanse America of Trump supporting thought. And I think, when you look at it just a little while afterwards, those enabling acts, we were told, were just temporary to deal with the current crisis. They never ended. Hitler soon became, as we know, the dictator. And we had the Night of the Long Knives just a few months later, where Kurt von Schleicher was assassinated along with a lot of his other supporters across Germany. That was, we know, looking again behind the scenes, who was behind that, who was funding it in terms of the higher power structures within the Wall Street and London higher financial complex. And a lot of these institutions never went away after World War II. They were never punished in Nuremberg. And even though you had people like John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy push against them, this has been the proto-deep state that people have to sort of recognize is taking this time as we speak right now to try to reassert what it believes was its right to control the world that was taken away by Donald Trump. So yeah, people have to, I think, look at things with a historical perspective right now.
Joaquin, getting to you, and as I said earlier, a lot of analysts were of the opinion that Trump might come back, he'd make a comeback, but I always sensed that it was not going to be that easy, the way he lost the election, or the way the American establishment gave the signal that we want Biden in. So I was always of the opinion that Joe Biden is coming, that he has the next tenure. So the question again, what I've asked Matthew Ehret, is that how do you see a post-Trump America regarding its geopolitics?
Well, I think when we look at a post-Trump America that may start in 2024 or 2028, what we might look at is so many changes having occurred after Trump's second or third term, that what we find happening is that the old relationships that had kept the old permanent administration with its perpetual motion for so long on that trajectory may not be able to recover. And because of this, when you set new relationships into a new trajectory, and then you consolidate new interests, they make their own roots.
So you are still of the opinion that Trump has a chance, he's going to be in the second term?
I'd say better than even at this point, based upon the reaction of the Congress. The Speaker of the House, the day after the election, began to push frantically for an immediate removal of the president. And that's inexplicable for someone that ostensibly has 13 days left to serve. Why would you need to look at the Article 25 of the Constitution, Section 4, on having the cabinet ultimately make a vote to remove him, to declare him unfit? Why? With 13 days left. Or then, if not doing that, to draft emergency articles of impeachment or some other extraordinary measure through the Congress that would be unconstitutional, but constitutional fights take time, and they might just have a vote in the Congress and the Senate to try to swear in Joe Biden tomorrow or the next day, from the time that we're recording right now, in fact. These are the things that are openly being discussed right now by Nancy Pelosi. She had a press conference. This is not a fly on the wall. This is not inside information. I'm claiming no divination from higher authority. This is what was on C-SPAN, CNN, NBC, ABC, on television, which shocked 80 million people that voted for Donald Trump. And they saw her say that we need to remove him immediately. And my question, Zain, is why would they need to do that unless they thought that Trump had a better than even shot at remaining in power after January 20th? I think that is a question that I just can't get out of my mind. I would say that until that critical moment, I was looking very much at the question that you're posing, what would happen in Joe Biden's foreign policy. But it seemed in one fell swoop, it looked like many things which only yesterday appeared like very fringe conspiracy theories that I don't think any credible analyst would look at seriously, all of a sudden materialized in one moment. And now I'm posing the question, why does Nancy Pelosi think that Joe Biden needs to be removed immediately? Rather, why does Nancy Pelosi think that Donald Trump needs to be removed and I think that something isn't right with this. And I can't look at it any other way. And I've tried to really stretch my imagination, and there isn't another explanation.
You know what I love about this show is that we have diverse opinions, and I respect diversity, because what Florence just said, you know, I learned from it. He gave his argument about how he thinks that Trump may have a chance in a second term. But my argument, if I summarize, is whenever I understand a country, I look at the behavior of its deep state, its bureaucracy, its judiciary. And when I look at the establishment in the United States, they're giving signs that they don't want Trump to be in the second term. So we can agree to disagree, and time will tell whose analysis is right. But one thing is for sure, Joaquin, is that there is deterioration in American society and the political scene at the moment. And my
Yes.
And you know, my question to Matthew is, and I want Joaquin to also comment on it. A quick analysis, Matthew. How do you see this political and social destabilization in the United States? This divide.
Well, I mean, I think that what was created under Trump's first 4 years, and I do hope, honestly, I really do hope, Joaquin, that your assessment is correct. I'm not as optimistic, but again, I have hope. But what we've seen is the creation of a lot of hope, and a movement that is, I think, something which is scaring the hell out of a lot of the technocrats trying to run the world from the top, where they don't like things that are out of their control. They like citizens who think of themselves like sheep that adapt to very controlled narratives that make them fall into line. That's not what you have coming out of a lot of Trump's support base, who finally have an idea of this thing called deep state that's been infesting their government, corrupting their institutions and their culture. And this is something which we see this all over the world. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that our system as a transatlantic system is running towards a sort of shock front collapse point. And we're going to be getting, at some point in the near future, coming on closer, a new system will be brought online. And the question of what will organize the operating system of that new system, what principles of value, what paradigm will determine its behavior? Will it be sovereign nation states? Will it be tied to long-term projects of win-win cooperation, or will it be a unilateral, unipolar system of a closed structure of controls from the top down above nation states? That's underdetermined. So I think that it's important just to hold that context in mind. I'm not going to go into details of tactics or individual details regarding how this will look like in terms of the social effects, but that's the top-down context that I can provide right now that I think might be useful.
Getting to Joaquin Flores, I mean, I want to ask you the same question in a different context. How do you see the future of this great divide between American society of the left and the right, and the political destabilization that's happening in the moment? How do you see it? What do you think could be the solution to this?
You know, whenever you see this type of polarization between activist groups and rank and file groups, community groups of the left and the right, these are always exacerbated by a collapsed economy. And the primary problem in the United States is its economic problem, and everything else becomes exacerbated as a consequence. Now, the culture war has been written about for the past 30 years. So what has really changed substantively are not the polarization of attitudes, but the fact that people have nothing left to lose. And when people have nothing left to lose, they go out into the streets and they get into street fights. We saw this, as Matt knows very well, at the end of the Weimar period in Germany, as Hitler began to rise to power. And we are in a critical moment like that. I think that the most toxic thing that I'm seeing from a lot of the right is the anti-China rhetoric. And I think that it's very, very much not constructive, and it really misses the point. You see, China could be any type of society, but what's needed between countries is fair trade and open mind towards societies that have a shared vision of mutual respect. And I haven't really liked a lot, especially coming from certain sectors, Steve Bannon and these strategists, playing games in Taiwan, playing games in Hong Kong. I think that these are false illusions. I think that they are setting up activists there for huge, huge uh, failure and decimation and heartbreak, because the one China policy is as logical as a one United States policy. And I think that a one China policy for China, if the international community could finally agree on China's vision of one China, then China would be in a much better position to say, okay, we feel comfortable maybe reducing some of our exports and growing our middle class. They would still be as wealthy, they would still produce the same. But what we need is for the Chinese establishment and the Chinese people to know that the United States is not their enemy. And the United States and China have a very long history of mutual collaboration on many things. I would really like to see a return to a positive relationship between the United States and China. And I think that the rhetoric, again, has just been not constructive. I understand people's frustration. They attribute the loss of work to China, but they really need to be criticizing more than anything the United States, the banking establishment, the Federal Reserve, and the way that GDP is built through debt. We don't need to have a debt-based society in order to have trade with China, and we don't need to accuse China for the shortcomings of America's own elites.
Well said.
Joaquin, I want to ask you a question that you don't like to answer, but I want to have a hypothetical situation if Joe Biden gets in.
Mm-hmm.
What is going to be the United States?
Sure. Oh, sure. No, yeah. Hypothetically,
what is its going to be geopolitical stance on China, Russia?
Yeah. I think that it will be nominally, on paper, it will appear as a pro-Chinese policy. However, I think that when we look at it, will be a continuation of some of the policies that we've seen under Obama. But the consequence of that also included high escalation of tensions in the Middle East and extraordinary pressure upon the Russian Federation. I think that despite whatever other intentions or strategic thinking they had in mind, it further consolidated a very serious bloc between Russia and China, which also made them co-equal partners with regard to the European Union. And so I would say that their entire estimation of the geopolitical map that we're looking at, with the idea that we can simply restore NATO, we can simply restore these transatlantic ties that Trump has in some degree changed, altered, or maybe even cut in some way, that the Biden administration would want to return to these sort of transatlantic and trilateralist notions.
Do you think that's positive? Do you think that's positive?
Well, I think it would be not negative if it were possible to do. You see, the problem is that at what cost? Everything has a cost. And when you try to do things that are damn near impossible, the cost goes up very high. Yeah. And that's my chief concern in terms of the foreign scene, because I think that, look, if we have a situation return in Iraq or in Syria, I think this would be the first consequence on Middle East policy. This would exacerbate some divisions in Pakistan, which we know has almost like a two-tier system, and it would exacerbate that sort of two-path course that Pakistan has been on in some way, and it would force Pakistan to. It may force a further confrontation between Pakistan and India because of the tensions that are occurring on the other side with Iran having a two-path system that's exacerbated by the United States. It's a domino effect of catastrophe. So Iran's going to have to return to its militant position in Syria, while at the same time you have a Biden administration talking about a return to a JCPOA. But in reality, we're going to see increase of finance and funding for ISIS Al-Qaeda groups, which inevitably draws Iran into a military conflict in the sands of Iraq and Syria. So it's just such a mess. And I think it really begs the question as to why Trump didn't start a new war in 4 years, and why during the Biden vice presidency, the United States engaged in some 3, 4, or 5 major conflicts, all with catastrophic results.
Yeah. Matthew, and these are one of the final questions. You see the right and left divide in the United States. United States is a cultural leader of the world at the moment. Do you see this ripple effect going into other countries, the right and left divide? Do you see other countries being influenced, or their masses or citizens being influenced when they see all this in the media, in the Western media, to actually copy it in their own country, and the other countries start having this divide as well?
Well, look, to answer your question quickly, and I guess with as much insight as I could for your viewers, I would just say that although the United States has been the target of the maximum amount of energy by this international apparatus that I just briefly touched upon, that brought us such things as World War II and fascism back in the day. This is their techniques of controlling by dividing and creating false gang counter gang operations is something which has been applied across the board in every single country. Nobody is untouched by this. No culture has been unaffected by the creation of false narratives that cause people to be so of the view that they have to take one side or another of two controlled narratives, that they fight each other. Meanwhile, those who want to victimize both sides laugh from above. This has been a technique used from ancient times. We have records of this going back to Babylon and the Roman Empire. And I think that if people really want to get smart, they have to think about what is it that the empire is afraid of, which is that people see their common interests, that we all have a common universal characteristics, being human beings and sharing this planet and this universe together in a very short interval of time, relatively speaking, of life. We all have a sense that we want things better for our kids, for our grandkids. We have a sense of that moral compass that expresses itself in various cultures and religions of the world. But despite the uniqueness of each culture, we have that universal character. And so when we act to our neighbors according to that common interest idea that we're all human, we always get stronger. We get more powerful as a species. We have more abundance, more creativity, more peace. And that's really underlying the win-win philosophy that we see coming through the operating system of the Belt and Road Initiative. Overall, there's problems in it. I'm not saying it's all angelic, but you have that concept, which is more, I think, in attunement with natural law, the discoverable laws of the universe that we were born into and have to adapt to if we're going to be morally fit to survive. The idea of a Hobbesian system of each against all, divide to conquer, the idea of creating a oneness in society that you want to manipulate through fear instead of through love and understanding, that's a system of empire which is, I think, really out of alignment with what the universe actually is built around. And that's why I think every time these empires achieve what they want, they get their desired effect of maximum control, you see a complete dissolution of that into dark age. It's like a parasite that can do nothing but kill the host, that it only knows how to parasitically eat off, which is what this oligarchical system has been since the times of Babylon, Roman Empire, and on. So that's what I would just say on that regard. And in that sense, yes, nobody is untouched by dualisms, polarizations, and what have you, but they have to think higher.
Beautifully said, Matthew. I want to get to the last question with Joaquin. Joaquin, same question, different context again. And I read your articles. You're also a social commentator. Don't you think that other countries and citizens of other countries would look at the United States, see one of the best civilizations on earth, a leading country, and then at the same time see what social polarization has done to such a massive mammoth of a country, and how it literally brought it down to its knees? I mean, look at what happened on Capitol Hill, right? Don't you think that citizens of other countries would look at the United States and learn a lesson that, okay, we're not going to go down this path. We're not going to rise the temperatures of the left and the right so high. We're not going to hate each other so much. We're not going to be such extremists in our ideologies that our countries would end up like this if we were to divide.
Yes. It's I would propose to consider that the social divisions between left and right are the product of economic issues. Now, what has exacerbated the tensions between left and right has been a decision by media to say we need to squash extremism. We need to temper these divisions. Well, people who need to eat and who need to work ultimately and immediately see the hypocrisy and futility and emptiness of these calls for calm because inevitably society is taking a side when it does that. And it's inevitably taking the side of the haves and not the have-nots. And so the real solution is for countries to say, we need to challenge the way that the Bretton Woods Agreement has been corrupted and been forgotten. We need to challenge the way that the IMF is able to dictate policies to us within the international market system. We need to develop policies of industrialization and building our own workforce, and we're going to produce our own goods, and we're going to sell things as much as we buy things. We're not just going to buy things. We're not going to sell off our precious resources or treat our workers like slaves, but rather we're going to build an international system based on the dignity of work and fair trade. I think with this in mind, you will never have extremism. You will never have radicalization or the polarization that you have so rightly said we have seen in the United States in recent years.
Thank you so much, Joaquin Flores, for being on Tactical Talk. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthew Ehret. Thank you for joining us from Canada. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having us on.
This was Tactical Talk. You were watching Tactical Talk. We were discussing the post-Trump world scenario and also the political deterioration in the United States. And until the next episode of Tactical Talk, keep on watching Tactical Talk. This is Zain Khan. Take care and goodbye.